Dee Tidwell, Golf Digest Top 50 Trainers 2023. I reached out to Dee. He's there in Colorado. I do spend a lot of time in Denver. And I never met him before, but I met him here in this conversation. Great guy. He takes the real physical approach to golf. He also trains skiers, mountain bikers, and snowboarders and golfers. And his approach is very unique. He does a full, he gives you a 5-page document you need to complete about your history and your surgeries and how you move, and then does a full evaluation and is able to derive what your motion is like based on that, based on his assessment, based on the document, but just a real kind of fundamental athletic approach to those sports. I have a particular interest in golf. We talk about the golf swing. He has 3 tracks that he works with: juniors, adults, and seniors, and how they're different. But just a great conversation on the athleticism and what's needed. Men will often complain that they don't hit the ball far enough. And is it a flexibility? Is it muscle? Are those the reasons? But it's a great conversation with Dee Tidwell about golf training and physicality of it. I really enjoyed this conversation, and as you'll see. Thanks so much for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic, I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business that lasted over 25 years? Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission: how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family and their passion and their careers, and how it helped them. Our podcast vision: growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. That's exactly right. Dee Tidwell, thank you so much for your time today, man. I really, really appreciate it. How's the state of golf right now?
In general, or here in Colorado?
Let's start in general, then let's go to Colorado.
Honestly, I don't keep a close tap of the state of golf because I'm so focused on the person that's in front of me.
Right.
Other than watching it on the weekends and staying up to par with my, no pun intended, with my clientele base. I would say, and I've heard from my colleagues, in the area that it's good, right? Here locally, it's been a little difficult here in Colorado, but since pandemic, everybody's playing more golf.
Yes.
More golf clubs are being sold, more equipment, more lessons, more everything essentially. So I think there's been a growth since then, which is positive. And so I would say it's good, except for here in Colorado at this moment in time.
Well, we were saying before, Colorado's had a rough winter this year. But like you said, there's more people playing golf now than ever. Nobody's watching it, but everybody's playing it.
Funny. Yeah. Yeah. I wonder actually, because, you look at the leaderboards on the weekend and you wonder, who's that guy and who's that
Right.
guy? And I wonder how many people are actually watching, and I wonder how much, Liv has had a play in that or whatever. I don't know. Whatever.
Hard to tell what the factors are, but the networks will complain that, it's lower viewership. Is it because there's no real big names? We were spoiled for so long with Tiger, right? And there's nobody there to kind of replace him. There's a kind of few subtle names, and they're all, by the way, the level is better than
Oh, it's
ever.
bananas. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I play with some of these, young men who just put the ball. I can no longer be surprised by length anymore, D. I mean, it's sort of point where it's just absolutely incredible the way how long some of these guys hit. Your focus though is is a lot. You've got great videos on it's I shouldn't say more, but it's a lot on exercise and stretching and understanding the body, how it works. Correct?
Correct. That is correct.
Yeah,
Yes.
because you do a really good job at doing that and explaining that. And because your background is not just golf, it's mountain biking, it's snowboarding, etc. Correct?
Yeah. So from a pro working with professionals standpoint, it goes back to downhill mountain bike racing, progressing into supercross and motocross, progressing into pro snow and skiing, and then eventually up on PJ Tour. So yes.
And what's the? I mean, that's just a large swath of kind of athletes you just mentioned. I mean,
Yeah.
it must be very different coaching them.
In the end, as it relates to golf, in your little quick intro there about what I do, it's the body that swings the club, right? And I think golfers think too much like a golfer, and I encourage my clients to think like an athlete who happens to golf.
Hmm.
So that way, it brings more ownership to their physicality, right? You have to be able to move well in, like you said, a mobility, a flexibility, stability, posture, speed, power type of manner in order for that club face to reach that ball. And if you can optimize your ability to move well, then your game improves because of it. Um, so the multiple sports aspect, it really doesn't matter because I'm still going to treat every client that walks in my doors as, let's put it this way: the golf industry typically will treat a golfer as one who is part of a field of snow, right? Since we're talking winter here, um, and I personally and my colleagues around the country and world, we think of each individual person that comes in there and to see us as a snowflake, right? So we all look the same in a field of snow. However, we know that there's trillions of snowflakes and we're all different. So if I treat somebody as I see them, as how they move, discover what their discrepancies are, and then create a plan accordingly, then those are the things that unlock people's abilities to move better. And when you do that, you go to your instructor, let's say, with more of an ability to move. They then can get deeper into their toolbox to help you with the things as it relates to the specifics of golf.
When you say learn how they move, what do you mean by that?
So if you were to come in, for example, I'm going to do a physical evaluation on you, right? I'm going to assess, I'm going to send a client history to you that's 5 pages long, right? To make you think about what kind of injuries and accidents and surgeries and things like that affect you. And we're going to look at it. We're going to review it. That's going to put some ideas in my head about how your body may or may not move. And then I'm going to confirm it or not, because sometimes I'm shocked, by doing a physical evaluation, seeing how well your body moves and how well it doesn't. And then, um,
Oh, your audio went. Can't hear you. Can't hear your audio just went. Speak now. Can't hear you at all.
changed on my end.
There you are. Okay, you're back.
Well, that's weird.
Okay, yeah, you were saying we were talking about how people move, how they'll write you'll give them 5 pages and then you'll kind of evaluate them.
Yeah. And so in that evaluation, I'll find out where your body can and can't move, right? And so
Hmm.
with that information, that's how I create individualized programs that involve a flexibility program, a joint mobility program, maybe it's stability or posture reprogramming. Most people who come in, we're dealing with posture no matter what, right? So just because of the seated workplace and texting neck and everything else that's happening in today's modern
Texting Nick.
society. So yeah, that's a big thing. And so in the end, it's specifically created for you and your issues, which means that your golf game is also unique and is not the same as anybody else and never should be seen as the same as anybody else's, right? So that's a big deal.
And do you do that same process for down here, for mountain biking and for snowboarders?
That's correct. It doesn't matter who walks in my door. I'm still going to determine what their issues are so that we can create a specific plan going forward to address each person's individual issues.
Hmm. A tennis player, a baseball player, doesn't matter.
That's right. We're dealing with
Is-
human beings, but because human beings and movement is so complex, everybody's going to have different discrepancies in injury history, right? That kind of thing. Not to mention, yes, we have to consider, all right, what are the movement patterns that are involved in the particular sport? And we have to optimize for that as well.
Very interesting. And do you have an athlete that play that downhill that does, biking, snowboarding, and golfing?
Oh, yeah.
What
Especially here
happens
in
then?
Colorado.
Yeah.
Well, it still doesn't matter, right? I'm still treating them as an athlete. Like I just did an Instagram post skiing the other day. On Monday, I posted it. Um, and my point was, look, I haven't skied in 5 years, but I'm out here crushing it. I'm doing it well. My body remembers it. I didn't even get sore. And my son and we were motoring. I think we did 10 runs in 4 hours or something. So we weren't goofing around, and that's the whole point, right? We should be able to do what we want to do when we want to do it to the level that we think we should be able to.
Hmm.
Yes, we might have a little bit of a sports specific soreness associated with that, or non sports specific soreness, because here we're coming into spring, right? And we're all going to, try to beautify our homes and things like that and gardens and whatnot. So I get sore from planting,
Hmm.
right? And digging and things, but I'm not used to being in a flexed position for, an hour or two, right? And so I get sore from that. And that's okay. But hey, guess what? I can do it. Next time I garden, it's not going to be an issue. Right. So, and that's the way we want to be able to function is, oh yeah, I'll go play tennis. Yeah, I'll be a little sore for a couple of days, but so what? I'm good. No injuries, no nothing. That's the way I like to view being able to move and deal with life.
Do you ever have to talk somebody out of a particular sport depending on their history or surgeries, etc.?
Oh. My initial response to that is no, because
But
there's always a way,
right.
right? Modified, yes, and helping people realize, particularly men and particularly golfers, um, for somebody in that position to understand that, look, you can still play, but there has to be modifications because of such and such. You don't have that capability anymore, or along the we got to work within the joint replacement joint limitations that are built in because it's not real anymore. Right? Something along those lines is usually the things where we're just talking about. Okay, we just need to tone it down a bit. So wrap your head around that. You can still play, but maybe you should play the appropriate tees, for example, for a golfer, and stop trying to play from the white and blacks. And you're 65 years old with hip replacement on the left. Maybe you should go up to where you belong. That would be helpful.
Wow. And how about I could definitely see that with golfers. Because, generally you could play golf and, until you're dead. I mean, you can still get in a cart and get around a bit. You can't hit it as far, but as far as mountain biking and skiing, I mean, with the hip replacement, I mean, that would be something they probably just wouldn't be able to do.
Oh no,
Really?
I've got clients who do it. Now again, it's about bringing it down to a level of responsibility, right?
Mm.
Again, let's live within our limitations. For skiers, it's typically, oh, I want to go do bumps again. Nah, no, you're not allowed to do bumps anymore. Okay. Skiing in the trees in a powder day, nah, I don't know about that, right?
Wow.
Riding, okay, so maybe you can't mountain bike, the extreme stuff that you used to, but hey, you can ride cross country trails perhaps that don't have the extreme terrain, or maybe we just unfortunately take you from out of mountain biking and just go to road cycling or gravel,
Mm.
right? There's always a will and a way, and I always try to find that so that we don't give people an excuse to stop moving, because I think when that happens, that's when the beginning of death begins, right?
Mm.
right? Especially for people who are active. Like that's like sort of the beginning of, oh man, my life is not very valuable anymore, and I
Mm.
don't like. I'm not there. I don't like to do that.
Mm. Do you ever does is it purely physical? I mean, what if somebody is trying to do something and they're clearly overweight? Do you talk about diet? Do you talk about nutrition?
Oh, we have to, right? Because what we and we're talking about sports and activities. Those are external things, right? That we're experiencing, but we can look at a car and know that it's a car, but what's going on the inside of the car is really what makes that car go.
Mm.
So it's no different with the human body, right? So particularly understanding that here in America we have a really bad food production system. It's
Yes.
very unhealthy. It's very chemical driven. In my opinion and research, uh, there's a circle there. It's food manufacturers, farming, not farmers, farming,
Mm.
pharmaceutical is there's a big loop, right?
Wow.
And they make money off of each other, unfortunately. And yeah, so I do talk about nutrition. We go down a road that's more specific, so I refer out. I would say, if in doubt, refer out. So I refer to people who are experts there and can really help my client in whatever they need in those areas. And so many health issues are related to nutrition and exercise that if we can just go create uh, more of a simple, um, hard to do for most people, but dietary plan that helps them achieve more health and success, then you know if you don't think that eating bad food creates a tight fascial network and system within your body, it does. Let me tell you. If your liver gets stressed, I don't remember exactly how many muscles that the organ of the liver actually references or refers out to, but it's something like 40. So if you have a liver issue, that can cause low back tightness, that can cause GI issues, that can cause incontinence. Like there's things that the body has that is a double feedback loop, right? Where your organs are showing your body that you have a physical issue, and it may not be related to the fact that you can't touch toes, right? So sometimes that's really important to go down, especially from a longevity standpoint uh, and prevention too. So,
Yeah,
oh,
I just yeah.
sorry, but for golfers and athletes in general, but for golfers are horrible at eating while they play,
Yes. Yes, and
right? So,
drinking. Yeah.
and so we talk about obviously that as well, because you're out there for 4 to 6 hours and you're walking, 4 to 6 miles or whatever. If you happen to be walking, you got to eat and drink, man. That's why after the turn at 11 and 12, you start to, and that's either because you haven't eaten or because you had a hot dog and a soda, whatever, right? So
Right. Yeah, I can imagine if you're, talking to a client and you're giving that initial kind of consultation and they're clearly overweight. And if they want to ski, I mean, that's a lot of pounding on the knees and the joints. And uh, do you say, look, we've got to get in better shape before you continue, or you need to modify at this current state, and when we get there, you can do things? What's that conversation like?
Well, it sounded like that question had a built-in assumption that is that they're already doing it, and then they're coming to me and we're having that conversation.
Ah,
So is it that, or they want to get back into skiing and they're overweight?
the latter. Let's go with the latter.
Okay,
That
all
was
right,
the insinuation. Yeah.
yeah. So that's because there's a difference there. I would ask things. I would obviously do my normal that we talked about already, but I would also ask them. When was the last time you skied? What does it feel like to squat or go up and down stairs? Anything that is kind of ski movement related.
Mm.
And the assumption is that they're unfit in this example. So I would ask them questions about movements that are similar to the skiing pattern. You know, probably ask them about their balance. What is your lifestyle? What are you eating? What is your stress level? All these things, because the whole pie and the whole picture matters, right?
Right.
Um, and then I'd be like, okay, if you want to do that, let's do it in a month. let's get you moving better. Let's make sure that you've got some kind of because the last thing we want to do is say, hey, go for it, and then you go up there and you hurt yourself, and it's
Mm.
been the first time you've been up there in 10 years and you're 50 pounds heavier than you were last time, So again, it's about let's be responsible. Let's come up with a plan. Make sure that the client owns it, right? So that they're part of the process, so that we both have a successful outcome, and it's the beginning of the future, right?
Is hitting a golf ball long or far more strength or flexibility related?
For the amateur golfer, it's flexibility. It is
What?
not strength. Amateur golfer,
Why professional is different?
because they work on both. They have, we when we work with pros, they're already coming to us as good athletes as it is, right? And all we're trying to do, well, up until last year with the FedEx Cup players, because now the FedEx is back to a normal season where they get, November, December off, which is the way it was 10, 12 years ago when I was on tour. Up until this year, our job was to just really limit the the amount of injury and the severity and the length. So they're already mobile, right? They're already flexible. They already have an intact, strong postural system, and that those three things is what you add strength and then speed upon, right? The average golfer isn't flexible, doesn't have mobility, is weak in its stability, posture is compromised, and so we can't add strength and power to. I mean, I always tell people it's like adding 500 horsepower to a Volkswagen Beetle.
Mm.
It'd probably be kind of fun there for a second until you tried to stop or steer. You know what I mean? So let's get the right frame underneath you before we start adding horsepower, right?
Wow. And gaining more flexibility, does that increase swing speed? What does that do for the golfer?
Yes, because if for example you could only get at your hips, 45 is the minimum we look for backswing rotation, right? And then we're looking for 90 in your chest to be pointing away from the target, right? So 45 and 90. But if you're getting 30 and 60, okay, your swing speed is only capable of producing a certain amount of speed, or your body is
Mm.
only capable of producing a certain amount of speed based off of those range of motions. So if we get you that 15 degrees and 30 degrees respectively, then all of a sudden we have all of that more range to generate, right, more speed, create, then generate, right? Because backswing's all about winding up the
Mm.
system, and then downswing's all about the unwinding of it. So, um, yeah,
Yeah, I find that when I try to increase, I try to increase swing speed, I try to get, my back completely to the target, and the more I do that, I start to get longer, but then I start to get a little more wild, a little more unpredictable, and then it starts to affect my irons, which are pretty good. So it's like, so then I end up going back to my old swing because I know it's more dependable. It's just not as long
correct.
and hard to deal with. But it's just I play pretty well, but I just know I can get longer if I start doing that. But it'll start infiltrating my other clubs as well, which I don't want. Tough
Correct.
conundrum there.
Well, and it's a timing issue, right?
Hmm.
Right? You know what your range is, and if you go past that range, your brain's like, "Oh, wait a minute, what are
Right.
we doing up here?" And so now, subconsciously, it's like, "Oh, well, I have to get here to here in a certain amount of time, probably the same as I was getting from here to here. What am I going to do to create, make up that distance, right?"
Hmm.
And probably it's going to be a sequence issue where if you in your normal swing begin with your pelvis like you're supposed to, but in that extra reach length, then begin with the upper body, or you start to cast, or you start
Hmm.
utilizing a different uh, body part. Now you're out of sequence, and then your timing gets off, and then you're trying to fix things at impact. Uh, so that's why I always tell people. I tell all my amateur men in particular, play 70% golf.
Hmm.
70% speed in your backswing, 70% in your downswing, because most amateur men are only capable of that.
Right.
And when they do that, they play slow golf, I'll say slow swing golf. It always works better. And like you say, I've got my accuracy. I know what my distance is,
Mm.
and that's where your consistency comes in, right? And that's all you want to do is have a repeatable motion.
Yeah, I find as I get older, I'm turning more into a puncher, right? I'm using, I'm not going all the way back, and I'm adding a club, and I'm not hitting it as high, but I'm getting more greens in regulation. And it's a different kind of game, but I'm scoring lower and getting better, which is the ultimate goal.
Right.
70%.
Yeah. Try it.
Yeah, yeah, it's very true. For me, my biggest when I overswing, right?
That's
I'm
right.
going to try to get a 7 there.
That's right.
You could put a 6 in your hand, and
Right.
just swing less,
Exactly.
and then I overswing and I blade it or I chunk it, and I just see this a lot with amateur golfers. I just
Well,
overswing it.
and so why do you think that way? Why do you think you need to do that?
I just think sometimes it's a lot of ego, right? Is that what you're?
Totally.
Yeah,
Let's take that because
yeah,
we're men, right? And athletes, and we're
yes. There's
competitive and
ego.
whatever, right?
Yes,
So take that out of. Why would you do that though? If you take that aside,
I like to think that I can get it right on the number with that 7. With a 6, I might roll it up, and it might not be as. I guess that's the reason. What do you think?
I would say because we've been trained that way by the industry.
Ah,
That's what I
yeah.
would say.
What do you hit your 7? Right. They asked
Well,
that with your
not
irons.
only that, but we watch the best in the world, and
Ah,
typically, because I don't like this about watching golf on television, because they only show the top 5. They might go to the top 10.
mm, mm,
They don't show the guy who's taken last, but he made the cut and he's still making $1 million a year,
yeah.
playing 38th or whatever. But so we've been trained to think that we can play as well as pros can, especially when we're compared to a pro during a lesson. Oh, hey,
Mm,
look at Tiger here. Let's look at what Tiger's doing. You should be able to do that. Well, no, I don't. I'm not built like Tiger, right? My legs aren't as long as his. He's 6'2" or whatever he is. I'm 5'8", let's say, or whatever. I don't have see. So it's like it's the
mm,
programming that we take in, instead of being, hey, let's just be realistic, right? I mean,
right.
like in mountain biking, if I look over a ledge and I'm like, oh wow, okay, I don't know if I want to do that, right? I'm not going to do it.
Right.
I mean, there's no training there. That's like, oh crap, yeah, I don't want to probably die or hurt myself, right? So that's obvious in our sport, right? But when it comes to golf, it's like we've been trained by,
Mm,
you can hit it as long as you can with this new club every year.
right.
It's that
Right.
same messaging, right? Um, so uh, that's a frustration that I have with the industry, actually,
Mm,
personally.
yeah. That is very astute. That's is accurate. Uh, so do your students come to you and say, I have a specific problem. I want to hit it longer, or I want to be more consistent. I mean, I'm sure that you hear this kind of thing. What do you do with them?
It doesn't change.
Ah,
It doesn't change because, again, if we get the body moving better, timing improves,
mm,
their ability to move improves, and a lot of these things, like
hmm,
as soon as the golf ball is gone, wherever the golf ball usually goes is an indication of what the body did or didn't do.
hmm.
So it's always traceable to what the body did or didn't do, and particularly the backswing, because the backswing sets up being an upper body move and the downswing a lower body move. The backswing in amateur golfers typically is where the downswing troubles begin.
Huh. Yeah, then you have some of the pros that have such a short backswing, but they still hit it. Like I think of John Rahm.
Yeah.
It's just a short, quick back. But again, it's wrong for an amateur to kind of replicate that kind of thing, right? Because they have different bodies and different issues and different approaches.
It's true. However, you can use a comparison like that for somebody who looks like him, right? So if you look and your
That
body type
builds.
is similar to, that's right, to John Rahm, um, then you could use, okay, you have a shorter, you have shorter femurs, you have shorter legs, but you have a longer torso. Okay. Look at what he's doing here and there versus, and same thing. Oh, you have longer legs, but a shorter torso, right? So let's pick somebody who looks like that,
Hmm.
for example. Um, and a lot of times you can go back with those guys to their past, and pick videos, especially these days because we have that technology capability. And you go back and you look at John Rahm when he was, how old is he now? 27, 8, 9? I don't even know how old he is,
Late
but
20s. Yeah.
yeah. We'll look at him when he was, just coming on a tour, or maybe when he was playing college golf or something, and just see how things have moved, how
Mm.
things have changed. Like, what has he developed into as his body finished to developing from being a teenager into an adult, right? So you can look at the past as it relates to the person that you're in front of at the moment to help them. So I'm okay with doing that if you're bioidentical with the person that you're trying to make an example of, but there's still the caveat of, okay, you look similar, but you don't move the same way. Just so
Mm.
we know. Here's what he does based off of his biomechanics that are similar to your biomechanics. We may get you closer there, never to where he's at because he's a professional, right? And that, the top in the world, but we can still use that as an example of, this is what is your type is capable of. All the other
John,
things
sorry.
withstanding, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Didn't John Daly famously say, like, when he lost all the weight, he said he couldn't hit a golf ball anymore?
Uh, it was either him or oh, and he's from here too. Who was number one when Tiger was number one? Also, oh darn,
It was big like that? Uh,
yeah. That uh, yeah, gosh, and he goes to Cherry Hills too. And I'm totally spacing his name.
was it Cherry Hills, really? Yeah, it's a world famous golf course there in
Ah,
Denver.
anyway,
It'll come to us.
yeah,
So did he say it as well?
mhm, yeah.
And what happened there? They just lost the weight and they just used to a certain takeaway and follow through and they just weren't able to do that anymore.
Well, I mean, let's face it, a bigger cylinder is going to move differently than a smaller cylinder, right?
Mm.
Right, and so the rotational forces, the G forces, the management of all of that is a lot different when you change the cylindrical shape, right? And so, yeah, it can totally change it. You get rid of a barrel chest, and all of a sudden you get your arms back because there's no barrel anymore. That
Hey,
changes like all kinds of things back there, right? So certainly, certainly.
on your website, you kind of have three. You don't kind of you have three tracks for juniors, adults, and seniors. Why are they so different?
So for juniors are doing something that we've all done. 100% of us do, and that is we grow,
Mm.
right? And there are developmental windows of growth that take place at certain time periods and ages when you are going through growth spurts and things like that. They're usually 1 to 2 different between girls and boys because girls go earlier, right? They develop earlier than boys. But for us boys, we, like, for example, the first speed developmental window is between typically 8 to 10, 6 to 10, something like that.
Mm.
And then the second one is between 12 and 16. And those are the opportunities where the body's like, okay, my nervous system, right, which tells me how to do everything, what I'm doing now and everything, can be programmed for speed in those two windows, right? So if I'm doing things as a kid, like playing multiple sports, which, by the way, all of your kids should be playing multiple sports. Oh my
Absolutely.
gosh. Um, we want to maximize that potential in that person, that kid's body, by allowing them to throw, kick, swing, run, ride, whatever, as hard as they can, not really caring about outcome for the first stage, but then a little bit more on the second stage, or phase, whatever you want to call it. But you're just essentially programming the nervous system to be able to create speed later in life. right? And so I might get this wrong, but Greg Rose from TPI, I'll probably get this wrong because my brain doesn't work very well, but said, when you hit both speed window, you have rocket fuel. If you hit the late one, you have jet fuel. If you hit the early one only, you have unleaded fuel. If you hit none of them, you have diesel fuel, right? So I have a client who is a golfer. Yesterday we were talking about it. I said, remember, you didn't play rotational sports when you were a kid, right? So he didn't play baseball or tennis or anything like that. So he missed out on the ability to program rotation as a movement and do it with speed. And so he has difficulty in understanding the process of separating upper and lower body, right? Pelvis and torso.
Hmm.
And then transferring from the top to the bottom with that idea, because his body, his brain doesn't know the movement. So that guy would be a diesel guy. And because we're way past his ability to learn it, there's some learning capability, but it's severely diminished because it's not built in, right? So for juniors, it's all about maximizing that, right? So we have a flexibility window, we have a cardio development window, we have a strength window, we have 2 skill windows. And so we talk to parents and coaches about developing the whole athlete, even if they have a specific desire to be, play golf at 12 years old or whatever. And golfing parents almost are the worst, but. And in the end, unfortunately, what they're doing is they're making their kids are going to suffer that decision that they're trying to live vicariously through. So, adults are adults, and then seniors are at the other end of the juniors, right? We're trying to take what the kids learn and created an athlete out of, brought it into adulthood, and now that's changed into a tight. So think of it this way too. So I just say people, like, when we're born, we're filet mignon, right? But as we get older, we turn into oh gosh, what's the dried meat called? Oh my gosh.
Not hamburger.
No, no,
Dried
no. Jerky, beef
foie
jerky,
gras.
beef jerky. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes,
Right. And so we're just trying to become flank steak as we get older, right? So we're keeping some kind of good mobility, and right. So, and that goes back to the nutrition part and hydration, by the way. So as we get later on in life, it's all about being able to be mobile and stable and flexible and have good balance and that kind of thing. So it's just about maintaining what was created in the prior 2/3 of our life, really.
Yeah, that is fascinating. Also, your point about I coached my daughters in soccer when they were young, and all the parents were great except for a couple of them. And then they did. I also they went to golf camps, at my golf club because I played there, and all the parents were great except for a couple.
Right.
And unfortunately, those are the ones you remember when you're training adults. Is there the difference between men and women? Is there do you have to train them differently?
Yes, because they are different.
Hmm.
Unlike our society says, they are
Hmm.
completely different, right? And so many levels, right? Physically, biomechanically, mentally, chemically, the whole shebang. We're all different between men and women. So the biggest one is that men typically are tight and strong,
Mm.
and women are typically um, flexible and weak, if you will.
Interesting.
Okay, so we're always. That's why I always say, like, yoga it's backwards. Like, there should be more men in yoga and more women in
Right.
strength training, right? So for my women, we're trying to maximize their stability, especially if they've had kids, um, regain their posture, their good mechanics, which is 100% always on, for everybody, and then to get them strong again, or get them strong for the first time. Men, the battle is always, particularly the generation before me. I'm 54, so the generation before me didn't get any flexibility work in
Hmm.
sports and things, right? There was no real warm up and stretching and things like that in the prior generation. So at least there's more information about that now for younger athletes, but it's always for men to try to get us loose and to keep us flexible. That's the biggest. in the end, the simplest thing is that's the biggest difference.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I know I take, I've been taking yoga for a long time, and it's mostly women. And yeah, I enjoy the flexibility and the getting off the grid, and just kind of devoting that
Yeah.
time, to my body. What has changed on the tour when you were on versus it now?
Um, Technology,
Mm,
right? We have different technological tools at our fingertips now than we did then. The biggest thing, um, Joey, the cool part is that I found myself in the downhill mountain biking industry as one of the first trainers back in 1999, 2000. And then going into motocross, also one of the first trainers, snow, first trainers, PGA Tour, first trainers. And in hindsight, that's, was a pretty darn cool thing because in all of those sports, like like the tour, for example, because you asked about it. When I was there in 2000, starting in 2004, there was maybe 4 or 5 of us on tour that would show up, trainers and things like that, and work with our players.
hmm,
And maybe half the guys would be focused on fitness. 40% perhaps. It was maybe even 30% were focused on fitness, and the other guys were in and out and doing whatever and not really paying attention, right? Today,
hmm.
that number's 99% of
Right,
guys are focused. And we've
right.
got intact teams and different sections and pies, parts of that team that help that player. So back then it was kind of the player and what he did and maybe his instructor and maybe a short game guy or something. But now it's trainer, medical, chiro, nutrition, mental, and
Separate,
then
yeah.
3 or 4 different coaches for the different areas of their swing and their game. So um, I would say that's really the biggest difference, and that's the way it is for those the other sports that I mentioned too. Like that's if you don't have a
Yeah,
team on the PJ Tour, it's probably going to be kind of hard for you.
really. Yeah, because when Tiger, I mentioned him again when he when he's at his peak, people were looking at golfers so differently. Wow, there's in shape, and there's a strong attention to fitness. I know I'm a big soccer fan as well, and the fitness level and the technology. They're all wearing heart monitors while they play, so they know
Um,
exactly their vitals all the time and how long they've run, and the technology is just really, really, I don't know if it's helped or hurt, but it's there and it's increased anyway. And especially with the equipment, I mean, they're hitting the balls longer. The score are the scores getting lower? I assume they are. I guess I don't know that.
I, I think it's probably relative, right?
Mm,
Because with ball technology and club technology and the
yeah,
changing of courses and things like that. I mean, maybe
right,
I don't
right.
know.
I don't know either. So Dee, on the podcast, I always bring up, so I started my tech business back in the 30s, wasn't paying attention to my weight. I got up to 340 pounds, and the doctor said to me, if you don't lose the weight, you're not going to see your daughter graduate. So she had
Mm,
just been born, and I got myself in this mess. I've always been an athlete my whole life,
mm,
so I was pre-diabetic, I was pre-hypertensive, and so I turned it all around, and I
good for
worked
you.
out. So 7 8 months, I lost 100 pounds, then I did some triathlons and lost the rest. And whenever I tell people this story, that I could just see it in their eyes, like, how'd you do it? How'd you do it? And my answer is just discipline. That's how I did it. Just discipline, people. There's no secret here. I'm not
That's
going to
right.
tell you anything you don't know. And I didn't start climbing more trees or something. It's just discipline. So I wonder how discipline plays a role in your life, D.
Well, you got to have a plan, right? I mean, a discipline starts with a plan. And with with technology today, it just creates a bunch of squirrel effects everywhere, right? And you're just squirrel, 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 squirrel. And especially for
Distractions.
this young generation, man, they're learning we're going to be in trouble because these people can't concentrate for very long, right?
Right.
Um, but the other thing is and this is another thing with the industry, talking about golf, right? You know, all these golf magazines that, oh, I saw this in this magazine, it's talking about this, and this is over
Mm,
here, and this. And so what happens is you take pieces of things and you start trying to apply them in your life, and there's no structure.
right.
It's just, you know, it's like a little bit of controlled chaos in a way, right? Instead of just saying, finding somebody like myself, for example, or any kind of coach, and saying, a specialist, an expert, right, and saying, look, I want a plan, right? I sell online mountain bike training programs. In those, every change going into a new program is a periodization, and a periodization is a schedule, and it's 6 weeks, and it's laid out, and it tells you exactly what to do on each day, and all you have to do is look at it and do it, right? So I think most people fail at fitness, for example, because they don't have a plan,
Wow.
just like you say. And so if you don't have a plan, then how can you create a habit, right? And that takes, 30 to 60 days or whatever it is. 45 is the average. And if you can't create a habit, then how does it become a part of your life, right?
Mm,
And those are the things, like you say, that and those are the things you did without talking to you. I know you did those things
right.
that create the equal sign discipline, right? Those are the variables that create discipline. So having a plan is hugely important, I think. And seeking those who are good at what they do is a really good step.
Yeah, I really like your point about those tips. All those magazine articles have all been replaced by, TikTok videos, Instagram quick videos on golf. They know that I like golf, so they're showing to
That's
me all
right.
the time. And then, it's like, oh, I got to try this. I got to hit up on the ball and the driver. And I was like, okay, I just get to a point where have to kind of settle it back and control chaos.
Well, yeah. And then, like, if you are seeing an instructor, for example, you're watching these things over here and they're ping, 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 and they're pinging your brain.
Right.
And they go against it, what your instructor's telling you
Yeah,
to do, because they're the one that's actually spent time with you.
that's right. And they know your patterns. They've taken video of your swing.
Exactly.
I have an instructor. She's tremendous, and she knows my swing, and
Right.
she knows what I do well and not. And those instructions are for somebody that you mentioned casting at one point. Some people cast, so here's how you don't cast. Some people are shallow. Some people, for all these things, there's a way to control it. And if you don't have those, that's why I often, people ask me for. I play with some higher handicaps sometimes, and there's, can you give me some tips? I'm like, I respect the PGA professionals too much to give you a tip. I know what I do wrong. My tip is hit the ball, try to have some fun. Just hit it, man. I don't. So it's so hard. I just see so many people's like, oh well, it seems like you're coming a little too inside. Maybe you should. I'm like, dude, come on, you don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Go find an instructor, please. They're not that expensive. There's many here on the
Yeah.
course. I kind of and some people get upset with me. Well, I'm like a 4 or 5 now, and they're like, well, you're a low handicap. You should know. I know me. I don't know you. I like
That's
you,
right.
but I don't know you, man.
Snowflake,
Yeah,
right?
snowflake.
Right.
That's right,
I mean, there's
snowflake.
two terms for that these days, but we'll stick
Yeah,
with the
that's
one that
right.
we're
That's
talking
right. It
about.
could be a little wimpy. You're a
That's right.
snowflake. Yeah, but a
But it's
snowflake is
true.
unique. Yeah.
But I mean, in like casting, all those
Yeah.
are glimpses of a particular amount of time, right? And that's happened because the body didn't do something,
Good point. Yeah.
right? It's like the slot is created when the pelvis moves the torso out of the way and the arms can follow
Mm,
where the pelvis and the torso have taken them,
right.
right? You can't create a slot without moving your pelvis and your torso. It doesn't happen, right?
It's a bit, as soon as you said slot, I actually shifted my hips and created a slot. It's amazing. As soon as you said it, yeah, because you have to get down there and you have to, yeah, create that slot. Dee Tidwell, what motivates you?
My Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, for sure.
Mm,
First and foremost, um, my wife, being a better husband for my wife, being a better dad for my kids, and being a good coach for the people that I get to serve. So it's really that, um, and coming from sort of a messed up place where that I created on my own, and
mm,
being able to become a different person and to radically changed my life, is something that I feel thankful for, and because of that, it motivates me to continue to forge forward. And honestly, I'm kind of stubborn as an athlete, and so I like to be ahead of the curve,
Mm.
and so I spend a lot of money every year learning under people who are a lot smarter than me. Um, and so that from within my industry perspective is really important to me, so that I'm ahead of what's coming, and I can serve my people with better information, and then also be able to refer out to people who have better
Hmm.
information. And that's probably it.
No,
The simplicity of it.
that's wonderful. That's wonderful. So many lessons to be learned there. So many of us try to take things on ourselves and, get professional help. It makes all the difference. I know that in certain areas I'm an expert in. I've taken years for me to learn, and I've learned from others, and I could help people in those specific areas. And you do the same. And uh, it's wonderful, and I love the way you've turned things around. And you got such focus there with spiritually, with your family, with your clients. It's noble, and it's wonderful. So how do you measure success?
I would say being able to be open to change, to allow yourself to take the next step that you are capable of.
Hmm.
Hey, that sounded pretty good. I just
That
made that
sounded
up.
great.
But it's true though, right? I mean, how could I have become, and it's something that I'm still working on. I see a counselor every week, a therapist every week, to help myself so that I can be better at those things. But that process started by hitting rock bottom and going, what am I doing? I'm almost an alcoholic. I'm addicted to marijuana and sex and all this other kind of stuff. Like, until you get to that point of realizing that you need to make change, it's difficult to make change, right? So
Mm.
I think you have to be open to getting into, when it comes to personal stuff, the dark, right, the ugly parts of yourself, which I don't know if a lot of people like to look at that part of themselves, but it's there. We all have it, right, to certain degrees in different areas, and many of the same, because we're still human beings. We have finite emotions, right? So, and they all basically play out the same way. So I think you have to be able to get ugly to get pretty, so to speak, or like God says sometimes, to take ashes and make beauty out of it.
Mm. In order to improve, we need to answer the hard questions.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, just like you and your journey, right? You got some hard information
Mm.
that was scary and somewhat dark for you, right? And right then and there, you're like, that's not going to happen to
That's
me.
right.
And that's when you began creating your process of change. But had that guy not said that to you, would it have happened?
I see that. Yeah, one has to wonder.
Right?
I recently had to drum up some pictures of back then on a project I'm working on, and I look at myself, and I can't help but thinking, and this is selfish. I say to my friends, "Why'd you let me get that way? Why didn't you tell me how bad?" And I'm tongue in my cheek, of
Of
course,
course.
but because it's just so different. It was 130 pounds
I
ago,
know. I
you
can't
know,
imagine that on you.
and so I wasn't going to make a temporary change, some yo-yo diet that I was just going to lose and then get it back. It's a complete life change. Like you just said, you've got to learn to change in order to advance.
Right. And so one of my clients I send down to Southern California to get treated by one of my colleagues, teachers, and therapists, who is extremely smart. I sent him down Wednesday, and you know, he told my client, "Look, this is going to take a year and a half. You fixing your lower back, your neck, right? That's contributing to felicitations and to nerve issues and numbness in your fingers and your hand. This process is going to take a year and a half.
Wow.
And we've had programming, right? What's that? What was that old weight loss show? where people were losing 100 pounds in 3 months.
Yeah. It
The
had some.
Biggest Loser,
That's it. Biggest Loser.
right? We have things like that say, "Oh, I can get it done in 3 months," and it's like, no, man, it took you 38 years to get here, or whatever, right? You started that weight gain 5 years ago, and you gained 20 pounds a year. That's 100 pounds. Well, guess what? It's not going to take that long to get that off because your body knows that and it wants to be that way. But
Mm,
it's going to take probably 2. So get it in your head. This is a long-term mission, and 2 years out of 38 isn't very long,
mm.
right? And there's a multiplier effect. Those 2 years are going to add another who knows how many years, right? On the back end. So suck it up. Buttercup, it's 2 years, right? And they go by, geez, so fast
They
anymore.
do.
It's
They do.
amazing.
Yeah, I remember thinking to myself, I got myself here. I'm going to get it. I'm going to get out, And then when
That's
something
right.
like that traumatic, just like what you experienced, and you change as a person, other projects that you take on in your life, you use that same discipline and that same focus, so you're able to achieve them better. And so growth happens that way, and it's a wonderful, wonderful outcome. Dee Tidwell, thank you so much for your time today. I'm so excited. I reached out to you. Golf Digest top 100 trainers of
50.
2023. Is it 50?
It
Oh,
is
my
50.
mistake.
Just to
50.
make sure.
Hell, 10. Let's say 10.
Oh, no, we can't go that. There's way
But
too slow to me.
I reached out to you and you said yes. And I'm often in your neck of the woods. When I'm there again, I'll let you know. And
Please do.
perhaps I'll have a cup of coffee. And
That'd be awesome.
I appreciate it. How can we get in touch with you?
I'm at coloradogolffitnessclub.com. That's my website. And then online for any kind of cycling training at traintoride.com.
Very good. And
Pretty
we'll put,
simple.
yeah, very simple. And we'll put those links in the show notes. Dee, thank you so much again. You be well. And don't worry, winter will be over soon and you'll be out there in no time.
That's right. Joey, thanks so much. I appreciate it, man.
You be well.
Take care.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Would you like to financially support the podcast? You can go to our Patreon site. Consider $5, $10, or $20 a month. There's all kind of plans that we have there. There's like a one-time payment. What is this podcast episode worth to you? $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. You be the judge. You can go to our PayPal account to do that as well. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations.